Good morning, everybody, and welcome to TLC Live every Wednesday at 11 in the morning. Good morning, Orlando Sánchez. ¿Cómo
Buenos días,
estás?
Andrea, ¿cómo estás tú?
Muy bien, muy bien. Besides the rain that messed up my hair, everything is okay.
Oh, you look perfect as usual. Let's give her a 10.
Well, I would say 8 because of the rain, but I mean, it's bad weather today, so we need to be very careful. But it's expecting in the afternoon to
Be nice.
be nice.
All right, so we have a busy program today. Welcome to the program as we do it every week on Wednesdays, TLC Live. A couple of program notes. We do have a phone number if you want to call in. Mark will screen you, keep it clean, have a legitimate question to ask that's related to the program, and we'll get you on the air. And no more videos, so you don't have to worry about being on the program on video. Now you can call in. The phone number is 281 833 3333, 281 833 3333. So that's a programming note, and Mark will put that number up throughout the program. So if you have a question or a comment, just dial on in. Also, we have our event coming up April 5th in San Antonio. As you know, Texas Latino Conservatives worked very hard last year with the Texas legislature to pass a concurrent resolution both in the House and the Senate to honor the contributions of Texas Tejanos based on the history, the long history of the Mexican Americans, the Spaniards, and everyone else that was here that we refer to as Tejanos in Texas. It's HCR, I believe, House Concurrent Resolution number 67, if you're interested in it. And so every April 6th in Texas, we will now honor the contributions of Tejanos. It's called Tejano Day in Texas. And on April 5th, we will be in San Antonio, which I believe is the heart of Tejano, Texas. It's probably the only city that still has terrestrial Tejano radio stations.
Uh-huh.
They very much love their Tejano music. It just showered all over South Texas. And we're excited to be at the Whitty Museum at the Mays Center in San Antonio on
And it's
April
going to be a
5th.
lunch.
It's going to be a luncheon. So if you're interested in attending, it's not too late. There are a few tickets left. Go to www.toughtejano.com. And so speaking of the event, when I first thought about bringing it to San Antonio, I thought of one person who has been a dear friend of mine for many years. He's a historic figure in Texas politics, and it's my dear friend Henry Bonilla, former congressman out of San Antonio. Henry and I go way back. Not only was it an honor to get to know him back when he was a United States representative from Texas, but he also helped me quite a bit in my campaigns here in Houston. And Henry and I, for years, have been trying to figure out how we can continue to deliver the conservative message to the Tejano, the Mexican American community in Texas. And so we're honored to have him on. Henry is now in Washington, D.C. Actually, he's there today. And he is with the Normandy group out of Washington. So, Henry, or Congressman, I should say, if you can hear me, let me know. All right, we don't have audio on Congressman.
We cannot hear you, Henry.
I wonder if he's muted or we muted him. But anyway, we'll,
Oh no.
Congressman. Okay, there
Okay,
you
now
go.
you unmute yourself.
How are you, Congressman?
Okay, good. Yeah, it was. I think someone unmuted me on that end because I haven't touched my computer. But Orlando, it's so good to see you. You have done so much for decades to help spread the word in our Hispanic communities throughout the state. The event that's coming up on April 5th. I mean, we're fired up, and not only because of that great event that you all are doing, but because of what's happening now in the Hispanic communities throughout Texas. Record turnout in the GOP primary, wide open to listening to our message. You know, the other side is really driving a lot of our neighborhoods away, and we are welcoming them with open arms. And I was just sitting next to Karl Rove, the former strategist and consultant with George W. Bush for many years, and we looked at each other and shook our heads and said, "Can you believe what's happening?" So thank you, Orlando, and to all of the folks in your organization and the Texas Latino Conservatives for what you're doing.
Henry, you don't remember me, but I used to be the main anchor here at Univision, so I remember you from that time, back in like probably 20 years ago.
No, no, no. It couldn't have been that long because you don't look much older than in your 20s, so that's not possible.
Okay, okay, Congressman, enough of that.
The makeup helps.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm at a real disadvantage here because even though my father was a broadcaster, I have no broadcasting talent or genes. I'm just here as a washed up politician. But I am have the honor of being with two people that have for many years been in broadcasting. As Andrea said, she was an anchor for Univision and had been with Univision in the United States for quite some time. And Henry, if you don't mind, I'll tell people that you have a long history in the broadcasting business. So, just for those that are just tuning in, tell us a little bit about your history in broadcasting.
Sure, I've had an incredible career. As you know, I was born in a housing project in a Spanish-speaking neighborhood. Grew up on the south side of San Antonio in a 99% Hispanic community. But my dream was to work in broadcast news, and so I was not on camera as much as I was a producer, executive producer behind the scenes. In essence, you're the architect of the show, and I did that in Texas. But at the peak of that career, I was fortunate to have an opportunity to work in New York City, and I was in charge of the top rated newscast in America back then, back in the day, and it was WABC television in New York, the flagship for the ABC network. And so this Hispanic boy from South Texas was given the keys to the car on that show, and we had some incredible times. And it was great to be part of that history. So, as you all know, the television business has evolved greatly over the years. But then I took a complete turn of career and ran for Congress. And as you know, Orlando, you and I were in the trenches starting way back many years ago, and we made some history along the border. But before I ran for Congress in that particular congressional district along the border, never in the history of our state had a Hispanic or had a Hispanic Republican or Republican period ever won that. So it was an incredible turn of events that we had back in that era. And then it also helped because of the Hispanic support we garnered then. It helped flip our entire state. It used to be completely dominated by the other party, and it was a thrill. You were part of that. We were part of that along the border, and we're able to transform our state into a strong state for our party, which doesn't, it's not just about politics, it's about the principles that continue to make our state the beacon of economic hope, the state of prosperity, the state where we have so many people moving here from some of those blue states that the policies are driving people away. But I'm just proud to be part of what our state offers now, not just for the country, but for the world.
Yeah, and I'm excited about what's happening in Bexar County. A lot of folks may discount Bexar County as because of the Castro brothers and totally say it's in the bag for the Democrats, but not really. And people forget that Henry Bonilla, and I'm going to call out the people that are helping us with our Tough Tejano event. Henry is a co-chair along with Hope Andrade, the former Secretary of State of the state of Texas, and of course Charlie Amato, who's a businessman in San Antonio, and of course, we were happy to hear from supporters. We got a nice support from April Ancida and the Ancida family in San Antonio. So there's strong conservative, business-oriented entrepreneurs that support free enterprise and freedom and liberty and value the family, and
Yes.
those are the values of the Latino community. So, we're excited about coming to Bexar County, and not only that, Henry, you not only were you in the trenches when you became the first congressman Hispanic from the area in Texas, but you've also been instrumental in helping elect Tony Gonzalez, and you were instrumental in helping and knowing John Lujan and all the conservatives that are coming out of Bexar County.
I'm so proud of Tony. No one thought he had a chance. He ran against a lady who had run before, and she starts with about $2 million in the bank. Tony starts with nothing. And I did help him early on, give him some direction and what he needed to do. And and we understand it in the neighborhoods. My father always, even though we were poor, he taught me about work. And I said, Tony, if you're willing to work harder, and he's had a tough life, but if you're willing to work harder than your opponent in these particular ways, and I gave him a roadmap, then you will win. And that guy went out there and just presented himself to the people in every neighborhood along the border and left that candidate in the dust. And he's now become he's becoming a national figure, and I'm so proud of him and what we've done. You mentioned State Representative Lujan as well in Bexar County. He's another person who just understands those values, and now they're building on that, because in our communities, we have as you know, the principles that the other side is advocating, like open the borders to everyone from that are streaming in from Haiti and the Mid East and Venezuela, and although they live right there on the border, they want the people to abide by the law of immigration. And the left wingers in DC and New York, like the CNNs of the world, they think just because our skin is a little darker that we automatically are going to fall in line with some of their radical agendas, like open borders, eliminating the energy industry, defunding the police, and also some of the patriotic principles. And our brothers and sisters in these barrios along the border and in South Texas, they're saying, no, that's not our agenda. And you know what else that our people also, when yes, other things about principle, like when the national anthem is played in our neighborhood, we stand up and we agree with those old fashioned principles of being grateful to be in this country and not trashing it all the time like the other party has tended to do lately. So again, I'm just proud of what we've done, and again, I just can't thank you enough with your organization for reaching out to Bexar County and for all you're doing across the state.
Yeah, and I'm going to let Andrea ask a question because I know she's chomping at the bit. But I got to say one thing, Henry. For years, I think politically, Latinos, Mexican Americans, Tejanos, whatever you want to call us, Hispanics, we weren't united. But you know what I'm excited about in Texas? It's not just TLC, Texas Latino Conservatives, but also we have other organizations like Hispanic Republicans of Texas. We have ART, we have RNHA, we have Bienvenido, we have dozens of organizations that are literally working together. And to me, that's exciting because, as you know, not only is Tony Gonzalez's district huge, but people don't realize how big the state of Texas is. TLC can't cover it by itself. ART can't cover it by itself. HRT can't. So it's exciting to me that we're actually working together to spread the message of opportunity and hope and economic advancement for people that are willing to work. The difference between our party and the liberal left is we're on social media, and we posted about Lionel Sosa the other day, and there's like 250 comments, and most of the liberals say, well, the Democrats give us benefits and give us benefits, but because you've been in Congress, benefits are great, until you run out of other people's money. Because the more benefits you give out, the more you have to tax, and eventually we run out of money. And so the conservative movement is telling the Hispanics that you work hard because those are your values. You have economic opportunity, and our surveys indicate that as Hispanic families climb up the socioeconomic ladder, they're voting with us, and that's exciting.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because every name we have mentioned thus far, and we can add more. We can add Governor Abbott. We can add State Representative Ryan Guillen, who has switched parties and is just doing incredible in the Rio Grande Valley. All of us want to take care of those in need. No one wants to turn their back on anyone who needs help from the government. With our hearts open to that. But the other side, they try to paint us as cold and that we want to shut everything down. And, it's not working. So, again, when you have people that go out in the communities, like even Governor Abbott, Lujan, Gonzalez, Guillen, and we have candidates in the Valley as well, when they get out and the people in the neighborhood see their faces and hear their messages from their heart, they quickly eliminate all that garbage that they hear from the left, that we want to cut off all their benefits and all that. And so I'm glad you brought up that point, but I want to hear from Andrea, because you pointed out that she's waiting.
Well, Henry, it's his show. I'm just like helping a little bit here. So we're facing a big challenge these days, as a conservatives, because everything that is going on in the country. What we can tell our new generations, I have 17 years old twins, and everybody is having, the future generations, but the millennials and the future generations. What we can do as parents, as a community, to deal with this challenge that we're facing and try to keep our conservative values.
Well, we just need to communicate with them directly about the issues we're talking about here today, and get our message out there. And again, when they see what we're talking about here today versus what they see on MSNBC and CNN, and those angry lines, when they see us, they welcome us, and they start to see the reality of what our principles are, not what the spin is from a lot of the far left. And and they're more angry now than ever because their issues are falling flat. And I have no animosity toward Joe Biden, but he is, bless his heart, some days he doesn't seem like he can find the door and figure out what he wants to say. And I'm not giving up. I'm not trying to give spin to that, but everybody can see what's happening. Just over the weekend, wow, how he misspoke on the issues involving Ukraine and Russia, and how they're trying to clean that up. And it's just unfortunate for our country that he's doing that. So all of that is just they're sinking far faster. The other party is, and that's making them desperate and angry. So we need to continue to be the happy party. And I also want to say thanks to Governor Abbott for his political organization that is focusing on our neighborhoods, and also to Dan Patrick. I mean, when you ask Dan Patrick for help with Hispanic candidates, he's first in line. And another organization I'm working with, we're hard at it. And I mentioned Ryan Guillen because he's not a national name, but he is so significant to what we're doing now in Texas. He jacked up the primary turnout in some of those counties in the valley by a couple of 1,000%, not 5%, not 10%. And so that's just driving them nuts in the valley right now, because that's never happened in the history of our state.
Well, that's right, and you have to be excited about what's going on in the RGV with Monica de la Cruz and with Mayra
Mayra
Yes.
Flores.
Flores. To me, it's exciting, and I just got word that your neighbor just to the north of you in San Antonio, Roman Garcia, an 19-year-old city councilman, is coming to the Tough Tejano. He'll have a few words to say about the role that TLC played in his election. But this is what I'm excited about, Henry, is the youth is spreading the conservative message. And Andrea asked a good question, but
Mhm.
uh, we have to just keep talking about the values of the Latino community or the values of Texas. And as long as we do that, our next
Yep.
generation will be in fine shape.
And you touch a very important point that we always discuss here: the media, the exposure that our kids and the new generations has these days with this media that we have in these days, that is completely different. You and I know because we used to work in a different era of the media. So the exposure that they have on the media these days and the social media combined is crazy. It's so much misinformation, and they're getting bombarded
Mhm.
from everywhere, and they're getting a lot of brainwash. And if you don't have a basic and values education at home, to me it's very important that everything comes from home, from your parents. If we as parents we don't do our job, we cannot let this happen, because the kids are getting the information outside. But it's our job as parents, as a family, keep that values with our kids.
Orlando, we need to get Andrea with us in the communities as well. That's a hell of a message.
You're right. Congressman, we understand you have a hard stop at 25 after the hour. We want to thank you for taking time out of your day to
Thank you.
be with us from Washington, D.C. We look forward to you coming back into Texas, and we'll see you on Tuesday at the Whitty Museum for our annual Tough Tejano Awards luncheon that you're going to be the MC. We're honored to have you. So God bless you, and I really am looking forward to breaking bread with you.
And as I call the call to action, please invite everybody, Mr. Bonilla, to our Tough Tejano Award.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. All right, I suppose he had to run.
So talking about facing big challenges, so we also are facing big challenge in the education. And that's why I'm talking about San Antonio also. That's why we have our next guest. He is Dr. Michael Stevens. He is a candidate for the Texas State Board of Education to represent District 1. And I am so happy to have him today.
And one other qualification. He's a graduate of TLC as Leadership Latino. Remember, he was in El Paso.
Yes.
He and his lovely wife drove from San Antonio to El Paso overnight to participate in the Leadership Latino program.
That's another thing. So I'm very excited to have him on the show because you don't know, but I'm planning on a full show about education that we're going to have in the following 2 weeks. And so that's why we want to just like touch base about what is going on in the Texas State Board of Education and why he wants to run for that, because we're going to have a full program about education in a couple of weeks. So welcome, Dr. Steven. I think you're mute. I think you mute yourself.
There we go.
Right.
I'm sorry about that.
Okay,
Thank you so much
now
for
we have
having me.
you.
It's so good to be here today. Thank you.
Good to have you, and
Well,
it's great to see you.
Thank you. It was good to, we had a lot of fun, my wife and I, when we went to El Paso. If District 1 actually runs from Northwest Bexar County all the way to El Paso. So we had a great time, not only attending the Leadership Institute, but meeting some of the constituents. And we met up with a few of the El Paso women's groups as well. We met with the West El Paso women's group, and we had a lot of fun, and look forward to going back to El Paso here in the near future during the campaign.
People don't understand, Dr. Stevens, some of the challenges that Texas candidates have given the size of South Texas.
Yes.
And, I guess maybe you and Tony Gonzalez can hook up and drive around the state of Texas, but your districts are massive, aren't they?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And it encompasses a lot of not only constituents, but school districts and ideologies. But what unites us, of course, is the State Board of Education, which is why I've decided to run for the state board. I'm a current educator, and I feel like we need more educators representing teachers on the State Board of Education. It's important to have a broad view. There's a lot of business members or people that have been in business and finance, et cetera, on the board, which are all important. But that teacher voice is also extremely essential. The State Board of Education is charged with, setting curriculum standards and writing curriculum and content and graduation requirements and coming up with certification requirements for teachers and improving charter schools and all of that. Those things are extremely important to have a teacher or someone that's familiar with education right there in the midst of that, giving a current and relevant view of how to write the curriculum and what's needed in the classroom.
Talking about that, Dr. Stevens, can you please give us a little bit of your background, the way we understand where you're coming from, and that's why it's important for you to run for this position?
Absolutely. Well, I've been in education for over a decade, meaning that I've been a classroom teacher. This is my 12th year in education. I've taught at the high school level. I'm currently certified. I teach English language arts in grades 4 through, or my certification is 4 through 8 and 8 through 12. My master's degree is in teacher leadership and education. I also currently work as an instructional coach, meaning that I help teachers throughout their school day on their curriculum and instruction. I go into classrooms and I assist them with their content knowledge and helping reach students in the classroom. I also have a doctorate in education with an emphasis in curriculum and instruction, which is extremely important for the State Board of Education because, like I said earlier, one of the tasks of the Board of Education is to write curriculum and instruction and to create these instructional standards, not only for teachers, but for students, graduation requirements, et cetera.
I have a lot of friends from the Houston area that are members of the State Board of Education. I'm going to make a comment, Dr. Stevens. I think you understand this, but for the people watching us, and I know that Andrea is going to agree. Andrea and I are both immigrants. There is nothing more important for the future of Texas than education. And when it comes to children, I don't care about the status of the child, whether they're the children of immigrants, legal or otherwise, visa extenders or visa holders. It doesn't matter. Children need to be educated. They need to have a proper premier education because our society benefits from it. And as our society benefits from it, and our inquiries have shown that the upward mobility of the Latino community helps the conservative cause in Texas. As Latinos become upwardly mobile, they start voting more conservative in the state of Texas. So education is critical in the state of Texas. And I just want to make sure that you understand that, and that you make sure that, the history and the contributions of Mexican Americans and Tejanos and Hispanics in Texas is part and parcel of what makes Texas a fabulous state.
Right. And I absolutely understand that. A little bit of my background, I'm a third generation Mexican American. Very proud of that. My grandmother immigrated from Mexico when she was a young girl. My dad grew up speaking Spanish in his home. My wife is a, I guess, a first or second generation, because her parents immigrated from Mexico along with their parents, and then she was born actually in Eagle Pass, and she grew up speaking Spanish in her home. In our household, we absolutely ensure that our kids understand their culture and that they're connected to their culture. So in the education setting, that's an absolute must. When it comes to education, it doesn't matter where that child came from, how they got into that classroom. They're there to learn. They're there to receive an education. They are there absolutely to be taken care of by the schools in the classroom from the moment that they arrive until the moment that they leave. That's the teacher's job. When I have kids come into my classroom, it doesn't matter anything about their background. I don't care about their, what their status is in terms of, are they legal or are they not legal? They're there for me to teach them, to build relationships with, to support, to be a part of their life. And that's extremely important. And I think that everybody needs to understand that, especially in South Texas, we have such a huge population, of a diverse population. And as you had mentioned when you were talking to Congressman Bonilla earlier, we have people coming across not only from Latin American countries, but from other countries as well. And reaching those students and ensuring that they're getting the proper education, that language barrier isn't something that's prohibiting them from receiving the education that they not only need, but that they deserve to be productive people. If we want to actually have them be productive in our society, we have got to make sure that they're receiving an adequate and a proper and safe education.
Dr. Stevens, I'm sure you're aware of what is going on in the public education these days, with these teachers and the system are talking about, about that races and about the CRT and all of those things that is going on. And I have many parents talking about that and speak it out loud and against that. So tell us, what is your plan to, education and the proper education, as you said, proper education, history, geography, but this is not the proper education to me as a parent.
Yeah, and let me just say before you answer that, Dr. Stevens, and I've said this before, one of the things that makes America the greatest country in the world is that people from every corner of the world can come to the United States and assimilate into this society under one flag, under one constitution, under one Bill of Rights. It doesn't matter the color of your skin, your nationality, whether you come from a communist country like I have, or from China, or from North Korea, or from the old Soviet Union, or Russia, or Eastern Europe, or Israel, or South America. If you come here legally with a visa, a resident card, and become a naturalized citizen, we're all Americans. That's what makes this country the greatest country in the world. And the liberal left is always trying to devise ways to split us apart, whether it's by gender, whether it's by race, whether it's by calling us Latinx, that 87% of Hispanics don't even know or care about, or have this tremendous distaste for Latinx, or CRT, which is saying that, the white Europeans that came over were, slave importing, slave owning, horrible people. Yeah, we had slavery. That's a horrible part of our history. But no one that I know wants to be split apart like that. And they have a challenge because they're the subjects that they're trying to cram down our children's throats in public education is not something that parents are buying. I just don't understand this liberal left movement.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. A lot of it, and it's really ironic because these things that the left devises to make everything inclusive actually divides people. You're dividing kids in the classroom, maybe not physically, but you're putting that thought in their mind that probably wasn't there before. When it comes to CRT, I'm really thankful that in the state of Texas that we've at least passed legislation, the House has, to essentially ban CRT, that it's not supposed to be taught in public schools. But it really, to ensure that doesn't happen, it takes that. Yes, absolutely, we needed that. That needs to stay in place. But we have to make sure that teachers are being held accountable on what they're teaching in the classrooms. Schools are supposed to be places of education, not indoctrination. As a teacher, I'm running for state board of education. My students don't know that. They have no idea what my political beliefs are. They have no idea what my religious beliefs are because I'm not there to share my politics. I'm not there to share my religious beliefs with them. I'm there to teach them English. I'm there to help them to learn to write, to read, to make sure that they're on grade level where they're supposed to be in terms of English language arts. That's my role of a teacher. So teachers have to be held accountable. And that also starts with school boards. School boards, if we're not holding our school boards accountable, if parents aren't involved in the school boards, if parents don't understand what's happening in their kids' classrooms, parents have to be involved, and they can't be afraid of school boards and classrooms and teachers who are and in some cases, unfortunately, hiding things. We hear about what happened in Austin last week with their Pride Week, and how some, it was reported that some of the teachers were telling the children not to tell their parents what was happening. That's not okay. That school board needs to be held accountable. Those teachers need to be held accountable. And then going back to the State Board of Education, if you do not have people who actually understand what the curriculum is, what's being taught in the classroom, that are looking at it, that are reviewing it, that are going through it with a fine-tooth comb, we may have a Republican-controlled state board of education. But unfortunately, some of these leftist ideologies have slipped in through the cracks because it hasn't been thoroughly reviewed. It needs to happen. And we have to look at each piece, especially when it comes to social studies, when it comes to, some of these books that are being presented through the English language arts curriculum. We have to take some time. We have to examine them and make sure that they are inclusive. And I do want to throw this out there as well. When we talk about these conservative values and this diversity that we have here, not only in our country, but of course in our great state of Texas, is a lot of times these left, and I've been attacked with it, but these leftists want to throw in the fact, well, this is just you because you're a conservative Christian. And you're trying to ram Christianity and your Christianity beliefs down our throats. And that's not necessarily true. There's a lot of conservatives out there that aren't Christian. We have a large, at the school that I work at, a large Islamic population. They're extremely conservative. We have Mormons, we have Jehovah's Witnesses, we have students that are extremely devout Catholic. We have students, of course, that are devout Christians as well. And that conservative ideology transcends across cultures and religions. It's not just what the left would paint as that white male conservative Christian ideology that is racist.
Dr. Stevens, I call it call to action. Please tell us how we can support you in your campaign, and hopefully we're gonna see you win in November. So please tell us about how we can support you.
Well, as we talked about a little while ago, I have a huge district. District 1 goes from Northwest Bexar County. It goes all the way down to Laredo. It goes all the way to El Paso, literally all the way to the edge of the border of El Paso there with New Mexico and, of course, Mexico. So really just the support that I need, of course, as every candidate does, is that name recognition and getting name out. The incumbent is not running. The two Democrat challengers are in a runoff So they haven't even been primaried yet. So there's that situation. I'm not quite sure who I'm gonna run against yet. Find out in a couple of weeks. But it's getting my name out there. Of course, people voting. When you look at the numbers, a lot of people showed up at the polls in El Paso and in Bexar County and in Maverick County and across from here to El Paso. But unfortunately, people stopped voting down ballot. There was a lot of people that voted for Tony Gonzalez, a lot of people, of course, that that went out and voted for Ms. Casey Garcia and et cetera. But people stopped voting when they got down to the State Board of Education. And all these issues are important. Who we put in at office for the State Board of Education is important. Whoever, our judges and everybody ahead of me on the ballot, that's important. And then, of course, there's always the
Dr.
financial
Stevens,
contributions.
I don't want to cut you off, but we have one more guest we got to get in. So listen,
yeah, absolutely.
I want to wish you the very best of luck. We're going to see you in San Antonio, hopefully on Tuesday, and we want to have you back on the program. So listen, take care, keep us updated, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. But we've got to move on to our next guest.
Got it. Thank you so much for having me. Y'all have a great day. God bless.
All right, bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Stevens. Well, also, we're still in the middle of war over there in Russia and Ukraine. But between that conflict, or while that conflict is going on, last week, North Korea also launched a missile after 4 years. And apparently, this is like stronger than the 4 years ago. What is the plan? What is the impact? We don't know. That's why we invite today Dr. Hans Stockton. He is the Dean Division of School of Behavioral Science, Global Studies Director of Taiwan and East Asian Studies Program at University of St. Thomas. So welcome to TLC, and we're very curious to see what is going on over there, because in the middle of this conflict it's already too much between Russia and Ukraine, North Korea does that, and we want to see and understand what is the impact of this.
Well, good morning. It's a pleasure to be with you both this morning. So yes, on March 24th, North Korea reported to have successfully launched the Hwasong-17 ICBM. This is a missile that's also known as a monster missile. Flies farther and carries a heavier payload. The Hwasong-17 would be able to reach hypothetically any location in the continental United States. The missile test was accompanied by a very high production value video trumpeting the success of Kim Jong-un, his regime. In the last 24 hours, however, there are reports out of South Korea as well as the U.S. intelligence community indicating that this monster missile test that was successful was actually an older version, the Hwasong-15, which doesn't fly as far, doesn't carry as heavy a payload. And so the question then is, why would North Korea fake a successful missile launch? And the quick answer to that is the week prior, there was a failed missile test out of Pyongyang. And that was actually this monster missile, but it failed spectacularly. And so the regime felt they needed another launch to very quickly reassure the population that all was well in their missile program.
Dean Stockton, I want to ask a broad question. During the Second World War, the Axis was lined up against the West. In the old former Soviet Union, we had the conflicts of Eastern Europe and the Eastern European, behind the Iron Curtain, stacked up against the West. It seems to me that is there a potential for a realignment, let's say, as of evildoers or those that want to cause the West harm, or that, let's just say Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, where's all this going? In other words, is there a realignment of these old, enemies of the West?
Hmm. There is some dynamic there that we haven't had to deal with in the well, for the most part, since the end of the Cold War. And I think you'll see a lot of media speculation that tries to paint two pictures or two possible scenarios about that alignment. One is based on Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilizations that says these alignments are going to start to take a Western versus um, Cynic or Russian or Orthodox, et cetera, divide. And other countries will then kind of come into one of those spheres. The other major paradigm is Francis Fukuyama's work on the end of history, where he declared the unabashed triumph of liberalism out of the Cold War. And so the divides wouldn't necessarily be cultural or civilizational, they'd be ideological. When you look at what's going on in the last 5 years, one question has been answered. Who would emerge or which power would emerge as the leader of that other bloc in formation? And right now, it's well, up until about a month ago, it looked like China. Now, with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Russia's making a play to remind everybody in the world that they're still a major power and to be contended with, but they don't have nearly the economic might and leverage that China does on so many countries in the world. So it is definitely an alignment of illiberal states, states that are not democratic, that have horrible human rights records, that don't embrace religious freedom, freedom of the various rights and liberties we hold so dear. So that there is something is what exactly is the magnet for each of those sides is still a question.
And I want to follow up by asking you, times have changed from the 1940s and then the 1960s when we had the Cuban Missile Crisis and the influence of the Soviet Union in our hemisphere of influence. But back then we didn't have social media. I mean, if you wanted to communicate across the
Yeah.
pond, as they say, across the Atlantic, you had to send a telegram. Uh, Today, it's instantaneous. So you know what's going on in North Korea. Well, not so much in North Korea, but in China or in Russia or in Ukraine, because all you have to do is just get on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook and any of the social media platforms. So, does social media have an impact on the two ideologies that are the ideologies that are you're talking about that are trying to reformulate and realign?
Well, I think on a bad day, I'd say the worst case scenario is that social media is a key propaganda tool for whoever's trying to send a message. It's a way to control information, but it's also a way to try to sneak around information. Take Russia right now, for example. They've really clamped down on media freedom, social media sites. They don't have the freedoms we do to begin with. It's much easier for them to control the communication through state media, for example. At the same time, though, there are ways to try to circumvent those barriers to use the same device to try to crack that monopoly on information, whether it's Russia or China. North Korea is so far off the web and social media that I wouldn't know where to begin on that. Uh, Mr. Sanchez, the other major change, of course, has been cyber warfare, cyber espionage, and cyber theft. Through those, similar technologies, that's a game changer that keeps a small power like North Korea in business as they steal cryptocurrency and use ransomware attacks all over the world to prop up their regime.
Yeah, I know there's cyber attacks. As former county treasurer of Harris County, I constantly
Mm.
worried about it. I'm on the board of a bank. We constantly worry about it. Hospitals, personal patient records have been stolen and sold back to hospitals. I mean, it is genuine. And in terms of the information war, you're absolutely correct because uh, bad actors can create what appears to be a legitimate news story, but it's actually derived from Russian operatives
Mm.
trying to convince the American public and sway us. No different than, Radio Hanoi, for example, during the Vietnam War, except now it's through platforms of social media and whatnot. I understand that's going on, but my question is more like for those that do have access to social media, uh, for example, I look at my country of birth, which is Havana, Cuba. I mean, it's an island, so we know it's isolated. They control virtually everything. They have block captains that control thought and speech, and they do limit the internet, just like North Korea. But let's look at Iran, a very intelligent population that does seem to have access to social media, websites, and platforms. The, that, I mean, as long as we keep the channels of communication open, I think benefits, let's say, those that are seeking freedom and liberty for humanity. Would you agree or disagree with that comment?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The question is, to what extent do we exercise our own good judgment when consuming mass media, and what extent are we willing to trust the government, the state, to do that for us? And we see that debate for quite a while here centuries here in the United States. As an educator, I'm very partial to this notion of critical thinking. And we really have to educate our young people, but as well as, my dad, my great uncle, and whoever I come into contact with. And that is, don't limit yourself, your information, to your own fishbowl, right? If you see an article or an Instagram post that just strikes you as, what? That is incredible. Take extra time, do some searching on the web, talk to people who might actually know a little bit about a situation, and then use your good judgment, use your critical thinking to, whether the truth is in the middle or whether you realize you're being bamboozled. We don't do that enough. And I think that is part of the monster that feeds a lot of that social media driven anxiety.
Yeah. So, Doctor, tell us what is the immediate impact that we're facing with the conflict and with the North Korea doing that, and also what the expectations, what we can expect with everything that is going on right now.
Well, Ms. Gomez, the timing of this latest missile test, as theatrical as it apparently was, comes at the nexus of several events. Obviously, you've got the Russian invasion of Ukraine has knocked North Korea off the front pages. Uh, Kim Jong Un really gets itchy when he doesn't see himself on the front pages, where the world seems to be ignoring him, and he uses missile tests and other provocative actions to get our attention again. But secondly, and perhaps even more importantly, 2 weeks ago, South Korea held presidential elections, and the incumbent president, who'll take office in May, is a member of the Conservative Party in South Korea, Mr. Yoon Suk Yeol. And the conservative parties in South Korea have been more hawkish towards the north, more likely to be closer to the United States diplomatically as well as militarily, strategically. That makes the North very nervous about them making progress in the way they want to. Third is the Biden administration, and not so much Biden administration. The change over this last year from Trump to Biden has produced very different foreign policy approach to North Korea after um, unsuccessful efforts during the last administration to really squeeze out some tangible gains with regard to denuclearizing North Korea. The Biden administration is still trying to figure out whether it wants a carrot and a stick approach, whether it wants to something more like Trump with the maximum pressure approach. But right now, it's North Korea has to show some good faith before the United States is going to engage with them seriously. The overall implication is, I think, not going to be known until the new South Korean president comes to office, and we'll see what his language, of his rhetoric, and what other actions he takes. He's been very vocal. That recently he said um, Kim Jong Un needs to be taught how to behave properly. That's not something you heard from the current president in South Korea, and so I think we're going to see the tension ratchet up. Is North Korea going to launch, an attack? No, that would be suicidal, unless that's Kim Jong Un's, dream. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of actual movement until, well, in the next month or two, we might actually see North Korea test a nuclear device, an underground test. And that's going to be the next step. See if they follow through with that and if it's successful.
This calls attention to the importance, and you just talked about the difference in administrations between the Trump administration and the relationship with Kim Jong Un, and now the Biden administration. Obviously, Mr. Biden is no fool. I mean, he served for many years on committees that dealt with international issues and national security. But this draws attention to the importance of diplomacy because we do have elections every 48 months, and we do have changes in presidency and administration and sort of, direction of foreign policy. But do you, in terms of, do you believe we have a consistent foreign policy? Because I think one of the things that destabilizes these actors on a stage sort of elbowing each other for prominence on the stage, right? You got Putin that doesn't want to be dismissed, that wants to show NATO how powerful he is, and you got Kim Jong-un in North Korea, who's now upset because all the attention may be at Ukraine and people are ignoring him. Then you've got the Chinese who are being very strategic, and then you have Iran that's very quiet but still trying to develop all of the necessary materials for their nuclear program. Is there consistency in our foreign policy with our diplomats, and how important is that?
Well, I'll limit my remark to, say, North Korea, for example. The North Korean dictators have simply exhausted our goodwill and our patience. When North Korea withdrew from the Nuclear Nonproliferation Treaty back in 2007, that was a culmination of 5 years of six-power talks that involved every major player in the region. Diplomacy had failed. Then the United States went in a more kind of bilateral direction. So the Obama administration pursued a strategy of strategic patience. It was a combination of carrots and sticks. But we were frustrated, and those failed to prevent proliferation in North Korea. President Trump came in, changed the dynamic dramatically, and sought to engage, met with Kim Jong-un 3 times, the first American president to do so. And despite the optimism of those encounters, those broke down in 2019. Kim returned to his old tricks. And so it's going to take some really bright minds to figure out how diplomacy can maybe keep the situation cooler than the lack of diplomacy. But we are not going to stop North Korea's nuclear development program. If they do test an atomic device in the next several weeks or months, that's a clear sign that sanctions have not budged him from his position. Diplomacy has not worked. No one wants military intervention. So we're looking really at containment. He's going to develop his weapons, but how do we make the punishment for doing anything actually aggressive with regard to South Korea? Just make it so abundantly clear that would be it. So that's a form of diplomacy, I guess.
Yeah, containment is, obviously we don't want military intervention, but I don't know how many more tools are in the tool bag with respect to containment. I mean, I think he's isolated economically. He certainly is isolated, socially in the world. It's just amazing to me. We tried that policy with Cuba. I mean, we had an embargo, and then we isolated them economically. Of course, not everybody did, because the rest of the world does trade with Cuba. It's just their economy's destroyed. But I mean, North Korea doesn't have much of an economy, do they?
Well, so any actual reliable data about North Korea is always hard to come by. They're very good at controlling information. Some estimates show that North Korea's annual gross domestic product, is about half generated from traditional economic activities, support from China, from Russia, et cetera. The other half estimated, it comes from illicit activities. And that includes money laundering, counterfeiting, counterfeit drugs, counterfeit alcohol, tobacco, cyber theft. And so you've got kind of the ultimate klepto state where almost up to half of their total economy is driven by criminal activities. So that really changes the dynamic when we apply sanctions on the, obviously the legal activities. And so you've got so much more that comes in otherwise. At this time, when we talk about sanctions, the UN has imposed any number of sanctions on North Korea's economy, the United States and other powers, a variety of bilateral sanctions. But what we see in the United Nations in the last couple of years is both China and Russia talking about that, the other team have worked very hard to reduce the level of sanction by the United Nations against North Korea. So it's almost unfathomable to imagine that their economy has been able to persist as long as it has, without the criminal activity.
Yeah. Well, very scary situation. Doctor, thank you so much for explaining what is going on. We wish to have you in the future when we know better or we know more about this. Well, thank you so much for helping us. Thank you so much for your time, and we hope you see you soon in the program.
Thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you, Dean Stockton. Appreciate all the good work the University of St. Thomas is doing, and I'm particularly proud of the University of St. Thomas. Not only do they have a nice capital campaign that they seem to be very successful at because the campus is looking great and expanding, but they're also reaching out to diverse people in the community, and particularly the Latino community, because there's a large population of young Hispanics that are undergraduate students at the University of St. Thomas. It's, traditionally been an underserved community, so a big shout out to the University of St. Thomas.
And thank you to our dear friend Claudia Deschamps for putting this together. She's been helping us a lot, to have these experts and these amazing professors.
No, I tell you,
in our show.
Yeah, we're blessed in Houston. I got to tell you, we originate this program in Houston, and when COVID broke out, we had the benefit of some of the best epidemiologists in the world because we have the largest medical center in the world in Houston. Many teaching universities that are medical schools and nursing schools. If we want experts on any subject around the world, we have Houston Baptist University, we have St. Thomas, we have the University of Houston, we have Rice University. From a technology perspective, we have Houston Community College and all the surrounding community colleges. We're just blessed here. I mean, we have it all. That's why, people from California are coming to Texas. Low taxes, freedom, liberty. You don't have to ask the government for permission.
That's very scary. Talking about scary things like in North Korea, that's a scary too.
That's a scary. That's a
scary. It's scary in-house.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week with another exciting program produced by our dear friend Andrea Gomez, who's doing a fabulous.
Aren't you proud of me?
I'm very proud of her. And so remember, Tough Tejano in San Antonio, April 5th, 11 a.m. at the Whitty Museum at the Mays Family Center.
We're going to be there.
We're going to be there. So is Henry Bonilla. So is former Secretary of State Hope Andrade. And so is Charlie Amato. And so is a lot of the other leaders in Bexar County and San Antonio.
And honored to have the governor of Texas.
Absolutely. We have the great honor of having some remarks by the governor of the state of Texas.
And Chingo Bling.
And Chingo
Don't
Bling
forget about
from
that.
Houston, Texas, will providing some entertainment while we're enjoying a fabulous meal.
That's going to be a historical moment. Chingo Bling next to Governor Abbott.
It'll be fun.
It will be a lot of fun.
All right.
So we're going to be there. And please join us also at TexasLatinoConservatives.com, TexasLatinoConservatives.com. Please become a member. And we have all our events that we're going to have in the following months. So please check it out and become a member. It's only $35. And if you want to give us another extra contribution, that will be very helpful also.
See you guys next week. God bless.
Nos vemos la próxima semana. Chao, chao.